My name's Luke, I'm 29, and for the past 6 years, I've basically been the invisible scaffolding holding my entire family together. Not because I had to, trust me, there were plenty of times I thought about walking away, but because, somewhere deep in my brain, I was hardwired to believe that family means loyalty. And loyalty meant stepping up when no one else would. So I did. When Mom lost her job during the pandemic and the bills started piling up, I paid the mortgage. When my sister Emma dropped out of college for the second time and needed just a little more support to figure things out, I covered her rent. When my dad's second business flopped and he refused to get a regular job because he was too proud to wear a name tag, guess who took care of their grocery deliveries every week? Yeah, that was me. All of it. But let me be clear, I never flaunted any of it. I never held it over anyone's head. In fact, I went out of my way to keep things calm. I'd always say, "Don't worry about it," when they promised to pay me back and never did. I brushed off their little jabs about me being married to my work or not knowing how to relax, because deep down, I thought maybe they were just dealing with stuff. I made excuses for them constantly. That's what you do for people you love, right? You give them grace. I work in IT consulting, freelance, which sounds boring unless you've been in the trenches of late-night server crashes and caffeine-fueled sprints through broken code. I started young, built a solid client base, and by my late 20s, I was pulling in more than enough to live comfortably. I bought a modest apartment outright, kept a decent emergency fund, and only splurged on two things: gear for work and my old convertible I'd been restoring on the weekends. That laptop they borrowed. Top of the line. My main work machine. The kind of tech that makes a grown man flinch if someone so much as breathes near it with a drink in hand. So when Emma knocked on my door one Thursday evening, looking sheepish with that little sister smile that used to get her out of trouble as a teenager, I should have seen it coming. "Hey, Luke, could I borrow your laptop for just a bit?" she asked, fiddling with her bracelet the way she always does when she's hiding something. I paused. "For what?" "Just a school thing," she said. "I have a Zoom presentation due in like 30 minutes and my laptop literally died. It won't turn on. I'll just use yours to present and then I'm done. Promise." Now, this is where I usually insert a mental sigh and cave, but I hesitated. She'd borrowed stuff before and returned it late, or messed it up. But then again, I'd set up multiple user profiles on the laptop, one just for guests. And she was already bouncing on the balls of her feet, looking desperate. "Fine," I said. "Guest account only. No downloads, no files, no messing with anything. You present, and you bring it right back. I'm serious, Em. That laptop's my life." She nodded like I'd handed her a golden crown. "Of course, duh. Just homework." I handed it over, and she scurried down the hall toward the kitchen, where she said the Wi-Fi signal was better. I poured myself some tea and settled onto the couch, letting my shoulders drop. It had been a long week. I had client meetings early the next morning, and I was planning to finish reviewing a presentation tonight, but I figured I could afford to rest for a bit. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I glanced toward the kitchen. Quiet. 20 minutes in, I walked past the dining room to grab a snack and noticed something odd. Emma wasn't on Zoom. She wasn't even looking at anything school-related. Instead, she had my laptop slightly angled away from the hallway, her body turned just enough to obscure the screen. But I caught a glimpse before she slammed the lid shut. A Facebook group chat window, with a message still glowing at the top. "Family meeting, let's discuss cutting him off." I stopped mid-step. I didn't say anything. I didn't make a sound. Just stood there, holding my breath, the fridge door still open behind me. My heartbeat went from confused to cold in seconds. Cutting him off. I blinked. Was I reading that right? Emma looked up and froze like a deer in headlights. It's not what it looks like." I didn't say a word. I just stepped forward, took the laptop, and opened it. She didn't even try to stop me. Maybe she knew the jig was up. Maybe she knew that lying would make it worse. The chat was still open. It wasn't just her. It was a group chat with my parents, my own mother, my own father, and a few other family members whose names flickered across the screen like ghosts at a seance I was never invited to. It wasn't just a message. It was a thread. A long one. "Mom, we can't rely on Luke forever. It's making us soft. Dad, he's gotten too comfortable thinking he's the hero. Maybe if we stopped asking for help, he'd learn humility." Emma, exactly. "He acts like he's better than us because he has money. It's toxic." Another cousin. He thinks he's in charge just because he pays for everything. We're enabling him. Then the kicker, the one that felt like someone had sucker punched me in the ribs. Mom again. Let's all get on a call this weekend. No, Luke. We need to discuss a plan to cut him off and move on. Cut him off. Move on. I couldn't feel my hands. I stared at the screen like it might glitch and reveal it was all a mistake. Some cruel joke. Some messed up alternate timeline. But the timestamp was fresh. Minutes ago. I looked at Emma. She looked away. You used my laptop, I said, my voice low, to plan a secret meeting about cutting me off? It's not what you think, she mumbled. It's complicated. We just feel like you hold everything over us. It's like we can't breathe without you watching. I almost laughed. I should have. But instead, I felt this weird, hollow calm settle over me. Like my brain was moving in slow motion. I closed the lid, packed my bag, walked past her, past the living room, past the framed photos on the wall, all of them filled with fake smiles and holiday memories funded by the guy they thought was suffocating them. Emma followed me to the door. Luke, come on. Where are you going? Don't worry about it, I said. Before she could respond, I stepped outside. The cold air hit me like a slap. It was barely 10 p.m., but the street was dead quiet. I got in my car and drove. No destination. Just out. Away. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my apartment, watching the clock tick toward sunrise, reading that chat thread over and over, memorizing the betrayal, feeling it settle in my chest like wet cement. These weren't strangers. These were the people I paid bills for. These were the people I said it's fine to, over and over, while biting my tongue and covering for their mistakes. So I sent one message. A simple one. Good luck handling everything without the person who's been funding you. And then I turned off my phone. I didn't expect them to come knocking that morning. Maybe a text, maybe some half-hearted, it was taken out of context, excuse a few days later, but not a knock at my door less than 8 hours after I walked out. Yet there they were, Emma, Mom, and Dad, standing in the hallway of my apartment complex like they were about to stage an intervention. Except this wasn't about my behavior. This was about theirs. They just didn't know it yet. Emma knocked again. Luke, come on. Just open the door. I didn't move. Please, she added. We need to talk. It's not what you think. I almost laughed. It was exactly what I thought. But eventually, I opened the door. Not because I wanted to talk, but because I wanted to see how deep the hole went. I wanted to know if there was even a shred of guilt behind their eyes. There wasn't. Mom stepped in first, like she still owned the place. She sat on the edge of the couch, legs crossed like this was just another Sunday coffee chat. Look, honey, I know last night must have been hard to see. But you have to understand, we were just venting. Dad leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded, doing that thing where he looked at the ceiling like he was above all of it. Everyone says stuff they don't mean in group chats. You've probably done the same. Emma didn't sit. She just hovered by the door, arms tight around her chest, looking more annoyed than sorry. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Venting. That's what that was. Mom smiled, like she was trying to smooth things over. Yes. It's just, we've been feeling a little overwhelmed. Dependent. And sometimes that makes people say things they shouldn't. But it doesn't mean we don't appreciate you. I stared at her for a long second. You said you wanted to cut me off. It was a poor choice of words, she said quickly. You said I was toxic. I shot back, eyes locking with Emma. You said I act like I'm better than everyone because I have money. Emma scoffed, rolling her eyes. You do, Luke. You always act like you're the savior. Like we'd fall apart without you. I couldn't stop the bitterness in my voice. You would have fallen apart. That's the whole point. Dad spoke up. All right, that's enough. We came here to clear the air, not rehash every single thing. You didn't come to clear the air, I said. You came because you realized you need me more than you want to admit. You got caught. That hit a nerve. Emma's jaw tightened, and Mom's smile faltered. We're family, Mom finally said. We don't abandon each other over a misunderstanding. I nodded slowly. Right? Family. Like when I covered your mortgage so the bank wouldn't foreclose. Or when I paid Emma's tuition, both times. Or when I gave Dad the money to start that catering truck that he bailed on after 2 months. That's not fair, Dad snapped. That was during COVID. It was last year, I said flatly. They left after 20 minutes. No apology. No remorse. Just vague justifications and a few thinly veiled warnings that if I stopped helping, we'd all suffer. And is that really what you want, Luke? I didn't answer. I just let the door close behind them and sat in silence for a long time. That weekend, things shifted. They stopped reaching out. No texts. No calls. I figured they were giving me the silent treatment, expecting me to come crawling back with an apology for being too sensitive. But I didn't. Instead, I started untangling myself from their lives. Quietly. No drama. I froze the shared grocery card. Stopped auto-paying Mom's utilities. Canceled the emergency backup transfers I'd set up for Emma's rent, since she never paid it on time anyway. I didn't make a grand statement. I just stopped. And then the bills started bouncing. 3 days later, Emma called. I let it ring. She texted after. Emma, did you cancel the rent help? I told you I was short this month. I could get evicted, Luke. Thanks a lot. Me. I'm sure the rest of the family chat has a plan. Ask them. She didn't reply. Mom was next. Mom. Sweetheart, the electric company called. What's going on? Did the auto pay fail? Me. I removed my card. Mom, but we need that. We're already behind this month. Me. You said I was enabling you. I'm trying to help you grow. She didn't text again. Then Dad. Dad, not sure what your problem is, but this petty behavior is childish. If you're going to throw a tantrum, just say it. Me. I'm not the one who needed a secret group chat to vent. I thought that would be the end of it. That maybe they'd figure things out, lean on each other, or, heaven forbid, take responsibility for once. But no. 2 weeks later, I came home to find Emma sitting on the steps outside my apartment. Hoodie pulled over her head, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just ghosted me since the last time she yelled in my living room. Hey, she said as I walked up. I didn't respond. Just unlocked the door and stepped inside. She followed. I need a place to stay, she said, voice low. Just for a bit. I turned. What happened to your apartment? She hesitated. Landlord kicked me out. Said I was 2 months behind. I tried explaining, but he didn't care. Said I should have had someone co-sign. You mean me? I'm just asking for a few nights, she said. Just until I find something else. I stared at her. You mean the way you just needed my laptop for a few minutes? Her jaw clenched. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is footing your bills for 3 years while you trash me behind my back, I said. What's not fair is watching my parents call a meeting to figure out how to cut me off while they still cash the checks I send. Emma didn't speak. She just looked at the floor like a scolded child. You've got other options, I said. Go to Mom and Dad. They're worse off than me, she muttered. Not my problem, I said, and I meant it. I didn't let her stay. For the first time in my life, I shut the door on my sister and didn't feel guilty. But that was the beginning of the unraveling. Over the next month, my family's calls shifted tone. At first, they were angry, accusatory. Then came the guilt-tripping. We're struggling, Luke. Family doesn't abandon family. We're not perfect, but we're all we've got. I ignored them. Until one message changed everything. It was from my aunt, the only family member I'd somewhat trusted. She was always neutral. Never asked for money. Never picked sides. Just polite phone calls and holiday cards. So when I saw her name pop up, I hesitated. Aunt Julie, I think you should see this. I'm sorry. Attached was a screenshot. It was another group chat. This time with Emma, Mom, Dad, and, surprisingly, my cousin Liam, who I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Emma, he's cutting us off for good. He won't even let me crash for a few nights. Dad, ungrateful little punk. He's doing this to make us beg. Mom, if he wants to play games, we'll hit back. We still have access to the bank account from when he set up the trust. Emma, wait, are you serious? That's still active. Mom, he probably forgot. He never removed my name. Idiot. Liam, so what's the plan? Mom, we drain it. Teach him a lesson. And just like that, the blood drained from my face. The trust. It was a backup account I set up 2 years ago during tax season. A placeholder for savings while I moved funds between investments. I'd added my mom temporarily to help transfer funds from their joint family account, but I'd forgotten to remove her. That account had nearly $48,000 in it. I logged in immediately. The balance read $6,172. And the last 6 transfers? All within the last 10 days. Rent, car repairs, credit card payments. All labeled with my family's names. I sat there, staring at the screen, hands shaking, rage slowly giving way to something colder. Something deeper. This wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was theft. The next 48 hours were a blur of numb anger and cold, methodical steps. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was hollow, like something had cracked deep inside me. And instead of bleeding, I just stopped feeling. That trust account was never meant to be touched. It was the financial version of an emergency parachute, something I'd built up over time in case everything went sideways. And now my own family had looted it like a jackpot, laughing about it in some private chat I was never meant to see. But I didn't scream. I didn't call or confront them. I just sat in my apartment, lights dimmed, the only sound being the faint hum of my ceiling fan and the occasional ping from yet another unread message from Mom. Instead, I opened my laptop and started backing up everything. Files, receipts, bank statements, every transaction that linked their names to that account, every message, every invoice I'd paid on their behalf. I organized it into folders, one for each family member. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I needed the paper trail. I needed proof. I needed to remind myself that this wasn't just betrayal. It was coordinated exploitation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was war, and I wasn't about to walk into battle unarmed. The worst part was how calm I felt. No breakdowns, no yelling, just a quiet clarity I hadn't felt in years. It was a Saturday morning when the weight finally landed on my chest. I woke up around 6 a.m. without an alarm, sat on the edge of the bed, and just stared at the floor. I felt like I was grieving someone who hadn't died. And I guess I was, my family. Or at least, the version of them I'd believed in. It hit me how much of myself I had sacrificed for them. Not just money, time, energy, peace of mind. I'd skipped vacations, turned down higher-paying contracts, postponed personal goals, all to be the reliable one, the fixer, the safety net. And for what? So they could sit around behind my back, complain that I made them feel less than, then rob me blind when I finally drew a boundary? That morning, I realized something terrifying. I didn't have anyone. Not really. No partner. No best friend I regularly confided in. I had work contacts, neighbors, a gym buddy or two. But I'd been so consumed keeping my family's world spinning that I'd neglected to build my own. That was the real rock bottom. Not the money. Not the betrayal. But the loneliness. I didn't eat that day. Couldn't. I opened the fridge and stared at the rows of neat containers and drinks and just closed it again. Instead, I took a walk. For hours. Through side streets and parks and neighborhoods I hadn't been through in years. I let my phone die in my pocket. It felt like a form of protest against the noise, the demands, the manipulation. And somewhere during that walk, as I watched a group of kids chase a soccer ball on a patchy lawn, something inside me shifted. I didn't want this to be the end of my story. I didn't want the betrayal to be my defining chapter. So when I got home, I pulled out a notebook, an actual physical one, not a digital app, and made a list. Not of revenge plans. Not yet. But of things I'd postponed, sacrificed, abandoned. At the top, I wrote, my life. And underneath that, bullet points. Apply for that product design certification I always pushed off. Join a local entrepreneur meetup. Get back to the gym. Rebuild savings, but only for myself. Travel alone, somewhere far. Make new connections. Real ones. Cut ties. For good. I stared at the list for a long time. Then I made another list. This one was titled, Their Debt. And I itemized everything. Every rent check. Every car repair. Every loan I never got back. Every wire transfer. Even groceries. It added up quickly. I felt like a forensic accountant tearing through receipts. By the time I was done, I had over $97,000 documented in precise, date-stamped entries. Not including the drained trust account. It wasn't about getting the money back. I'd accepted that ship had sailed. It was about clarity. About facing the truth I'd ignored for far too long. I had been used. Over and over. Not just by one family member, but by all of them. And every time I swallowed my frustration or forgave another broken promise, I trained them to think it was okay. That night, I turned my phone back on. Hundreds of messages. I didn't read a single one. I blocked Emma, then Mom, then Dad. One by one. I deleted the group chat I used to keep open with them out of habit. And just like that, silence. The next few weeks were hard. I won't lie and pretend I became a brand new person overnight. There were days I felt empty. Days I questioned whether I was overreacting. Guilt is funny that way. It doesn't always leave just because the facts are on your side. Sometimes it lingers like smoke, whispering, maybe it's your fault too. But I pushed through. I went back to the gym. Started small. 3 days a week, light weights, short runs. But even that brought a strange kind of peace. I wasn't doing it for anyone, just me. I signed up for the design certification and began taking evening classes online. It felt good to learn again, to build something that wasn't for someone else's benefit. And slowly, I began to reconnect with myself. One afternoon, I ran into an old college acquaintance at a cafe. We got to talking. Turned out he worked in a product startup and was looking for a freelancer to overhaul their UI/UX. I took the job. That job turned into 3. Those 3 turned into a contract. Within 2 months, I was making more than I ever had, with clients who actually respected my time and expertise. I also started writing again. I used to love short fiction, but I'd stopped years ago. Now, it became my therapy. Stories of betrayal, growth, resilience. I didn't publish them. They were just for me. But they reminded me that pain could be fuel if I let it. By month 3, I was rebuilding my savings. By month 4, I'd moved into a better apartment, one with a balcony and high ceilings and light that streamed in every morning like a quiet promise. You're free now. But of course, freedom always comes with echoes. About 5 months after cutting them off, I got a letter in the mail. A real one, not an email or text. It was from Mom. The handwriting was careful, scripted, as if she'd written it slowly, trying to sound like the woman who used to read bedtime stories instead of the one who drained my bank account. Inside, the letter was 2 pages. The first was a lukewarm apology, not for what they'd done, but for how things escalated. The second page was a plea. They were struggling. The bills were piling up. Emma had moved back home. Dad was behind on his taxes. Could I help, just this once? I stared at the page for a long time. Then I folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and dropped it in the trash. By the time spring rolled around, I'd built a life so cleanly detached from my family that it almost startled me. It was like I had pressed some invisible reset button on everything: relationships, routines, even the way I breathed. My new apartment overlooked the edge of a forest trail, and in the mornings, I'd make coffee and sit by the window just to watch the breeze slide through the trees like the world had finally remembered how to be quiet. That silence became sacred to me. No late-night phone calls about emergencies, no surprise visits, no sudden guilt-tripping texts from Emma. Just space. For the first time in years, my life was mine. But the thing about silence is that it gives you time. And time sharpens things. I never set out for revenge. Not in the dramatic, TV movie sense. But the deeper I got into rebuilding, the more I realized that healing wasn't enough. Not when the people who broke you were still walking around thinking they did nothing wrong. Not when they could turn around and do it to someone else. And especially not when they still had access to things they shouldn't. Like my name. See, here's the thing I hadn't thought about until I went to apply for a business credit card for my freelance work. Someone had used my name recently. Several someones, actually. My application got flagged, and when I pulled my full credit report, the pieces fell into place like dominoes. There were 3 recent hard inquiries from companies I'd never heard of. 2 declined, 1 approved. A personal loan for $8,000 under my name. Not linked to any of my current bank accounts, but flagged to my credit file nonetheless. I nearly choked reading it. The loan was active, 6 months old. Payments had been missed. The balance hadn't gone down. I sat in my office chair and just stared at the screen for a full 10 minutes. And then, like muscle memory, I opened that old folder, the one labeled Family Debt. It had grown since I last touched it. I'd added a few more screenshots, some of the chat threads Aunt Julie had forwarded me, things they never thought I'd see. But this changed everything. This wasn't just betrayal. This was fraud. Identity theft. I called the bank first. Got the loan flagged. They asked if I wanted to press charges, and I told them I needed a little time. Because now it wasn't just about getting even. It was about making sure they never could pull this again. Not with me. Not with anyone. I started with Emma. Through an old friend who worked in IT security, I traced the IP address linked to the loan application. It had originated from the same city my parents lived in. Not ironclad proof, but then I remembered something. Emma once begged me to co-sign a loan 2 years ago, and I'd refused. She'd said something weird back then. I just need your info for a second. It's not even a real application. I'd brushed it off. Thought she was being dramatic. But now I saw it for what it was, practice. She'd remembered enough of my details, and she had access to some of my old documents, to pull it off. That night, I sat at my desk, dim lighting overhead, the buzz of my monitor humming like a warning bell, and wrote out a plan. Not a dramatic one. No burning bridges or screaming confrontations, but a methodical one. I was going to take everything they thought they still had and quietly cut every remaining thread. Step 1. I pulled my credit freeze, then locked it permanently. I filed a report for identity fraud. The bank escalated it immediately. They assured me they would investigate, and if evidence pointed to a known associate, legal action could follow. I told them I'd cooperate fully. Then I reached out to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, an old classmate from college who'd specialized in small business and financial abuse cases. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but when I laid out everything, the stolen trust funds, the unauthorized loans, the shared accounts they drained, he didn't hesitate. "This is actionable," he said. "You've got enough documentation here to press charges or sue." "I don't want to sue," I said. "Not yet. I want leverage." And that's where the real setup began. Over the next few weeks, I worked quietly behind the scenes. Between client work and classes, I gathered every paper trail I could. Emails, texts, statements, IP logs, even Emma's Instagram posts that coincided with purchases linked to the fraudulent account. Meanwhile, I got Aunt Julie on board. She was still neutral, but not blind. She'd started pulling away from the family too, after Emma moved back in and chaos followed. "They're always arguing," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "Your mom treats your dad like a wounded prince and your sister like a child. No one takes responsibility for anything." I asked her if she'd be willing to help. She hesitated. "Depends. Help how?" "I just need someone inside the house," I said. "Someone who can confirm a few things." Quietly, she paused, then nodded. "All right. They've used me enough. Let's see how they like it." Step 2. Reclaim everything that was still mine. I dug through every old shared account and service I'd ever linked them to. My Amazon Prime, my Netflix, my Google Drive. I combed through logins, changed passwords, removed access. It was like exorcising ghosts. Each time I hit remove user, I felt lighter. I also had a few tricks left from my IT work. Little scripts I'd written over the years to automate client access changes. I modified one to scan old file paths and accounts for any leftover permissions. It caught 3. A shared Dropbox folder Dad had used for his failed business. A Google Sheet Emma had access to. And, disturbingly, an email forwarding rule on my old Gmail that sent copies of receipts to Mom's inbox. Gone. All of it. Step 3. Confront, without confronting. I knew my family. Confronting them directly would only invite denial, manipulation, tears. So I sent them each a letter. Physical, typed, and hand-delivered by courier. Each letter was simple, cold, legal in tone. "This letter serves as notice that you are no longer authorized to access any financial accounts, services, or data belonging to me, Luke, last name. You are also hereby informed that your actions have been recorded, documented, and are currently under review for legal escalation in relation to suspected financial fraud and identity theft. Any attempt to contact me regarding this matter outside legal counsel will be considered harassment and responded to accordingly." No emotion, no opening for guilt, just facts. They'd know what it meant. Aunt Julie called me 2 days later, trying not to laugh. "Luke," she said, "your mom is spiraling. She thinks you're sending the FBI after her." I didn't smile. Not really, but something in my chest loosened. Step 4. Close the last door. I booked a meeting with a private mediator. Told him I wanted to dissolve all informal financial agreements with my family and set boundaries in writing, not for negotiation, but for enforcement. He helped me draft a statement I could file if needed, outlining everything I had paid for, everything they had borrowed, and how future contact would require legal intermediaries. The point wasn't just revenge. It was clarity, permanence. I'd spent so many years reacting to their chaos. This was the first time I was proactive. The final piece? I bought a website domain. I wasn't sure why at first. Maybe it was pettiness. Maybe it was therapy. But I started writing everything down, the whole story. Not just what they did, but how I got out. How I rebuilt. How I recovered. I called the site Out of Orbit. A metaphor, I guess, for breaking free from the gravity of people who always pull you back down. I didn't name names. Didn't make it traceable. But I wrote with brutal honesty. It was read by a handful at first. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Emails started pouring in. From strangers. From people who said they'd been through the same thing. Financial abuse, narcissistic parents, sibling betrayal, quietly paying for everyone until they broke. And somewhere in all of it, I found something I hadn't expected: community. I wasn't alone. They thought they'd cut me off, that they'd move on without me. But I was the one who moved on, who leveled up, who stepped out of their shadow. I had been patient, far more patient than my family ever deserved. But the moment for finality arrived in the most unexpected way. It began with a letter, not from them, but from the county assessor's office. A routine notice about a property tax adjustment for the land across from my parents' neighborhood. Oddly enough, my name was included in a batch of property owners notified about upcoming zoning changes. I almost tossed it, until the map caught my eye. Highlighted in pale yellow was a rectangular plot. 5 acres. My parents' rental home, where they'd lived for years, sat on that land. Only, according to the attached list of owners, it didn't belong to their landlord anymore. It belonged to a holding company, and that holding company belonged to me. It took me a full minute to process it. Then it hit me. This was the land deal my ex-client had offered me months earlier. The one where he wanted to unload several distressed property lots at a discount. I'd purchased them quietly through an LLC during a phase of rebuilding, not knowing the exact locations, just that they were solid long-term investments. Turns out one of those plots was the land under my family's home. For the first time in a long time, something aligned in the universe for me, not against me. I sat back, staring at the ownership record, and realized the opportunity fate had placed neatly into my hands. This wasn't petty revenge. This was the cleanest, coldest closure imaginable. I wasn't going to evict them with cruelty. I wasn't going to leave them homeless on the street. I wasn't going to scream or lecture or force apologies they'd never mean. I was going to give them the one thing they'd never given me. A choice. A line in the sand. A final moment to face the truth. But first, I had to understand exactly what situation they were in. And for that, I needed Aunt Julie. She met me for coffee the next morning, her expression already weary as she sat down. "Luke, you're not going to believe what's happening at the house." "Oh, I believe it," I said, sliding the assessor's notice across the table. She blinked, then blinked again. "Oh my goodness, this is your company? You own the land." I nodded slowly. "I didn't know. Not until now." She sat back, exhaling. "Well, this changes everything." "What do you mean?" Her voice dropped to a hush. "Your parents are about 6 months behind on rent. The landlord was threatening eviction before he sold the land. He didn't warn them. They're scrambling. Emma's working part-time at a boutique, but they still can't catch up. They were hoping," she hesitated, "hoping you'd help again." I almost laughed. Not from joy, but from the bitter irony of it all. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. But they had taken everything from me: money, trust, peace, while convincing themselves I was the problem. They'd stolen my funds, used my name, plotted to cut me off while draining me dry. They wanted to live without me? Fine. I would simply give them what they wanted, permanently. The plan unfolded slowly, meticulously, like threading a needle through every frayed part of my past. First, I contacted my lawyer. He handled the legal communication with my LLC, updated the land records, and prepared a notice for future tenants. Professional, neutral, courteous. Then I drove to their neighborhood. For the first time in almost a year. Not to confront them. Not to scream. Just to see. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Weathered. The yard unkempt. A curtain hung crooked in one window. The reality of their financial situation showed on the exterior like bruises. I sat in my car for a long time, engine off, watching the front porch where I'd spent countless summers, fixing things Dad didn't want to fix, carrying groceries Mom insisted she needed, helping Emma study when she claimed she couldn't focus alone. It felt like watching an old life through glass. Then I drove away. The next step required precision. My lawyer delivered a formal notice to my parents and Emma. Clear, firm, and perfectly legal. The property was under new ownership. Outstanding balances needed to be addressed, and the new owner offered 2 options. Pay the total back rent within 60 days and sign a new lease at a reduced rate, if they committed to financial stability. Vacate the property within 90 days, penalty-free, with relocation assistance of $3,000 if acknowledged in writing. Both options were fair, humane, ethical. The notice did not reveal my name. I wasn't doing this to gloat. I was doing this to give them an exit without stripping their dignity, while also making it clear that the era of exploiting me had ended. Predictably, the storm arrived 3 days later. My phone lit up with a sudden barrage of messages. But they didn't come to my personal number. They came to the email I'd set up months ago for legal communication only. First Mom, then Dad, then Emma. The messages were frantic, accusatory, full of disbelief. Mom, this is unfair. The new owner must be cruel or heartless. We need more time. Dad, we were lied to. The old landlord tricked us. Someone is trying to force us out. Emma, this is ridiculous. Can you help? Please, just this once. I stared at the screen, the words blurring into one long plea. They didn't know. Not yet. Not until I replied. I wrote one email. Short, calm, unemotional. Asterisk option 1 or option 2. There is no option 3. Property owner LLC asterisk. 2 days passed. They chose option 2. They couldn't afford the back rent. They didn't fight it further. But then came something I wasn't expecting. A letter. From Emma. Handwritten. Like mine had been months ago. She wrote that she felt lost. That the last year had unraveled her. That she had made mistakes, serious ones, and that she didn't know how to face me. She didn't apologize directly, not in the way I once hoped she would, but she admitted fear, shame, confusion. She said one line that struck me. I don't know how to be anything other than the version of me you rescued. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was honesty. And honesty was something I hadn't seen from her in years. My response was simple. I sent her a letter through the mediator. Asterisk, I hope you find the version of yourself who doesn't need rescuing. Take care of yourself. Luke asterisk. No anger. No cruelty. Just distance. As moving day approached, Aunt Julie kept me updated quietly. My parents found a smaller place on the outskirts of town. Emma moved in with a friend temporarily. There was tension, blame, tears, old patterns collapsing in on themselves. But this time, without a financial cushion to soften the landing, they finally had to face the consequences of their own behavior. I didn't attend the move. Didn't watch them pack. Didn't drive by. I didn't need to. My part was already done. After they left, I visited the house one last time, not as a son returning, but as an owner inspecting a property. It was empty, silent, dusty in the corners, the carpet worn. But there was something unmistakably liberating about standing in the center of that living room. The same one where they'd planned years of my obligations behind my back, and feeling no weight on my chest. Only clarity. Only peace. I renovated the house completely over the next 2 months. Fresh paint. New fixtures. Updated floors. I turned it into something renewed, something clean, something that didn't carry the echo of old arguments and whispered manipulation. Then I sold it. Not for revenge. For closure. For the life I had built entirely without them. The sale closed one warm afternoon, sunlight spilling across the contracts as I signed the final page. My lawyer shook my hand. The new owners, a young couple expecting their first child, thanked me warmly. They didn't know the history, and they didn't need to. The story ended with me walking out of the title office and into a life I'd chosen, not inherited. A life I built with my own hands, my own strength, my own boundaries. A life no longer weighed down by people who never wanted me to stand on my own. As I got into my car, I checked my phone. No messages from them. No updates. No drama. Just quiet. For the first time in years, the silence felt like freedom. And the story closed not with triumph or cruelty, but with truth. Sometimes family isn't lost all at once. Sometimes you outgrow them. Sometimes you rise beyond them. And sometimes letting go is the revenge.